And as I mentioned, I'm Doug Morehouse. I'm with Carrousel Travel here in Minneapolis, and we're glad that you've taken a little time to join us today. We've been hosting these seminars every couple of weeks, trying to feature some different products, different locations around the world, trying to keep your thoughts and interest going in traveling. Maybe you aren't ready to travel yet. Maybe you're not ready to make that commitment yet, but we want to be here and provide those thoughts and ideas for when you are ready to go and you can make plans for the future. So figuring out those bucket lists and what's next to check off, and we're hoping that some of these things will help you check off those items. Today we have with us Maggie and Carl from Silversea Cruises, a wonderful luxury cruising experience. Silversea is a very good partner of ours. They have a wonderful product. We've done a lot of business with them over the years. We've done actually several full ship charters with them as well. And so we have a very strong respect for their product. They do a really good job. And so we pick our partners carefully, and Silversea is one of those partners that we really appreciate working with. Excellent product, excellent service, a lot of the standards that we carry out from Carousel as well. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Maggie and Carl, and we're going to let them tell you about their excellent product here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you all and thank you, wish you a happy new year. And I'm going to reiterate what Doug said, that we do hope that you can take a look at Silversea and some of the wonderful destinations that we travel to. Because of limited time, we're not going to cover every destination, but Silversea has been in the business since 1994, and we cover over 900 different destinations each year. So there's pretty much not a space in the world where we don't go to. Today, we're going to focus on Antarctica and the Galapagos and some of our expedition destinations.
And before we jump too deep, I was just going to mention, if you want a better view, if you're not in a speaker view, up in the upper right hand corner, click your view. You can go to speaker view, then you will get a much better picture of who's presenting or speaking. And also, if you have any questions, please submit them in chat. We'll be glad to answer questions. Sorry to interrupt you, Maggie. I forgot to do my due diligence at the beginning.
No problem. Thank you. So as Doug said, we are a preferred supplier with Carrousel Travel. We've done business with them for many, many years. I've been in the business for 20 years, and in that time, we've worked with Carrousel. I've been with Silversea in 20 years, and we've been doing business with them ever since that time, both in the FIT, in the leisure market, and charters and incentives. Silversea is an all-inclusive product. We include everything in your fare, your wines, your spirits, your gratuities. And then starting in June of 2022, we are going to be including shore excursions in the whole pricing. The expedition product has been with us for several years. We've expanded on it, we're growing it. And Carl is our expert in expedition cruising, and he's going to take you on a little trip down to the Great White Continent and talk a little bit about it. A little bit about Carl. Carl's been to Antarctica, I think 4 times, Carl, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass the baton on to Carl, and he'll begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie, and welcome everyone, and thanks very much for taking the time. I'm just going to share my screen here, and just give me a second to get set up. Oops. There we go. So as Doug pointed out, and as Maggie suggested, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the more remote destinations, what we call expedition. Talk a little bit about Silversea in general, but then delve a little bit deeper into some of these destinations. And I think we'll start off with a video.
It's when all your senses become aware. You are present in focus. That's traveling to me. It's an urgent need to go and observe this world that we all share. A ray of light, a pair of eyes that tell a story, an instant of perfection. Images printing on your soul. This is authentic beauty. It's all out there, and trust me, there's always room for discovery.
The thing I love about that video is we are a small ship luxury cruise line, but there's very little. I think right at the end, there's one image of a cruise ship. It's very much about destination. And that's sort of the thing that sets us apart. I've stuck this slide in here because in speaking with Doug and Kelly, we knew that people would likely want to address some of the COVID protocols and that sort of thing. I just put this in here to speak very, very briefly about the fact that as part of the Royal Caribbean Group, and we are, Silversea is owned 100% by the Royal Caribbean Group. Royal Caribbean Group, together with Norwegian Cruise Holdings, got together a number of months ago, put together a 14-person panel, including former Governor Michael Levitt and Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who was part of the CDC, the former director of Homeland Security, I think was in there as well. Anyway, they put together a 72 or 74-page manual or series of guidelines that was then submitted to the CDC in terms of suggesting how we think we can get back to cruising safely. It's a very, very comprehensive document, goes into all sorts of protocols. And the protocols are everything around vaccinating the crew from top to bottom, cleaning protocols on the ship. When we start sailing, going out at reduced capacity. So in the Galapagos, for example, our new ship, the Silver Origin, sailing at 70 guests instead of 100 guests. So I don't want to delve into it too much and tell you any absolutes or suggest any absolutes, because it's such a fluid situation. If there's anything we've learned in the last 9 or 10 months about this, it's that it's such a fluid situation and it changes drastically. Yes, the vaccines are here, but how quickly are they going to be rolled out? Hopefully faster than currently. So, to get the most up-to-date information, it's a matter of checking on what we know now, but please bear in mind that it could change at any minute, and it does, and it has, and it'll continue to change. I think the main takeaway is that we're not going to sail until it's safe to do so. Safe for our guests, safe for our crew, and safe for the destinations that we're visiting, the ports of call, the people in the ports of call that we're going to. So I think that's the main takeaway there. Going back to Silversea as a brand, I talked about destination. And the thing that makes that possible is the fact that we have very, very small ships. When you consider some of the contemporary cruise lines and some of the ships that are operating in the Caribbean and in the Med, for example, they're 2,500, 3,000, 4,005. I think some of them are pushing 6,000 guests on these ships. Our largest ship is 608 guests, and they all have they all go down from there. The guest capacity is smaller than that from 608 down to the smallest one at 100. And it's the size of those vessels, the physical size of them, that allows us to get into all of these places. So in 2019, we visited over 900 destinations. In 2020, it was going to be over 1,000. And again, that's made possible by these small ships. We can get into ports that the large ships just cannot get into. For example, we can sail right up the Thames and into London, under the Tower Bridge and into London. There are 2 cruise lines in the world that can do this. Here in St. Petersburg, many, many cruises go to St. Petersburg, but very often you're tying up or you're pulling into the port of St. Petersburg, which is a very sort of industrial kind of port. It's very bleak and stark looking. And then you've got a 40-minute drive in bad traffic to get into St. Petersburg. We can come up the river, tie up at the English Embankment, and then we've got about a 20-minute walk to the Hermitage from here. And we're here for 3 nights. Excuse me, 2 nights, 3 days. So it's not as though we're just breezing through for a few hours. The small vessel allows us to get in here and do these sorts of things. And we'll talk a little bit more about Antarctica and the Arctic. It's this small vessel with a very, very high ice class that allows us to get into the little bays and the little fjords and the little inlets and penetrate a little bit deeper and a little bit further. So Maggie mentioned expedition cruising. That's what we'll talk about a little bit more. And what is expedition cruising? So with my tongue firmly planted in cheek, expedition cruising is not this. And these people are not on an expedition. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. This is how a lot of people start cruising. They have young families with them. They have limited time. They have limited resources. And it's very much about being on the ship and all of the amenities that the ship has, the slide and the bumper cars and all the various pools and all that sort of thing. It's less so about the destination, but you're sailing with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. What we're planning to do, or what we do, is we're attracting a group of people who have said, okay, I did that, or I didn't do that because I never wanted to, but I am interested in cruising because I understand that there are smaller ships. So once you decide and you make that move to a cruise line where I want to travel with fewer people, a few hundred rather than a few thousand, I really want to get off the ship and explore the destination. I don't need too much by way of amenities on the ship. Of course, the ships are very well appointed and very, very luxurious, and butler service in every suite and complimentary Wi-Fi for every suite category. But I very much want to experience the destination. With expedition, we take it a step further. The ship is this beautiful luxury small floating hotel that becomes our platform from which to go and explore. So we take the Zodiacs, and here we're exploring in the Darien Gap in Central America, or we're going sea kayaking in Antarctica, visiting a very, very remote beach in Iceland. This is the Russian Far East, so across the Bering Sea from Alaska in Chukotka or the Kamchatka Peninsula, in the Galapagos. And something that a lot of these places have in common is you couldn't buy a t-shirt here if you wanted to. There is no t-shirt shop. We're so far away. These are places that are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get to on your own, hiking on a trail here in Madagascar, or a very, very remote beach in Malaysian Borneo. Very often we don't see anybody else, any other cruise ships. We might see the village that we're visiting and some of the folks there, but it's not overrun with tourists. So again, these are places that are very, very challenging to get to on your own. In some cases, impossible. You wouldn't be able to go to Antarctica, for example, by yourself. You need the right ship, you need the right gear, you need the right expedition team. We've talked a little bit about the all-inclusive nature, so you can see here, one night pre-hotel and post-hotel. We include the economy class international flights to get you to the destination. There are business class upgrades that are very, very reasonably priced. Butler service in every suite category. The gratuities are included, the Wi-Fi is included, all of the things I mentioned. And then with expedition, we include all of the excursions. So everything you see now going forward, when you see people in Zodiacs, and I talk about Zodiac cruising, when you see people hiking in the Galapagos, in Antarctica, in the Arctic, sea kayaking, it's all included. There's no surcharge for this. These are not shore excursions, because for shore excursions, you need infrastructure. And where we're going, it's so remote, there is no infrastructure. We are the infrastructure. And that's all done and facilitated by a group of expedition team members. And these are folks who are the leaders in their field as glaciologists, marine biologists, historians, ornithologists. They're the ones that you have access to who are taking you to these places and bringing it to life for you. And in the colder regions, excuse me, in Alaska, the Russian Far East, the Arctic, the Antarctic, and even the Chilean fjords, we provide a complimentary parka as well. Now, I know Minnesotans, and I'm from Toronto, we all know what parkas are and we all have them, but we have many, many guests coming from warmer parts of the world who don't even know what it is. I got the smallest size parka that we have and the smallest size boots that we have. And when I do presentations in Latin America or even in Southern Florida, I take those with me and I show them and tell them, this is a parka. This is what we give you. Don't worry, you won't be cold. And just quickly, very often in Antarctica in January and February, it's warmer than it is at home in Minnesota and in Toronto. You know, it might be 32, 34 degrees and you know, we're in a deep freeze and it's in the 20s. So speaking of Antarctica, do another quick video.
The White Continent. This really feels like Earth's last frontier. It's so wild and remote here, but you instantly feel at peace. Everything is so vast, so pure, quiet. It's awe-inspiring. The ice, the whales, the ocean. This is a sanctuary we all have to treasure and preserve.
So as Maggie said, I've had the very good fortune to have been to Antarctica 4 times, and our marketing department provides us with these fantastic images and beautifully put together videos. And my own experience, and I talk about Antarctica probably almost as much as anything else, maybe the Galapagos first and then Antarctica. And I never feel like I do this place any justice. You have to see it to believe it. There's nothing else like it on Earth. You know, sometimes you'll visit some place and you'll say, oh, it's like this, but without the crowds, or it's like that, but without the mountains. There is nothing else to compare Antarctica to, including the Arctic. The two are so very, very different, and I'll explain why shortly. This is a very typical landing. One of the questions we often get is, do I need to be a triathlete to be able to do expedition? Not at all. Our demographic at Silversea is typically, or sort of the sweet spot is 55 to 75. In expedition, it's 45 to 65. But I took my 5-year-old son to the Galapagos, and we've had folks well into their 90s come with us to Antarctica. So you do not need to be a triathlete. This is a very typical landing. You can see it's quite flat, and the expedition team are there to help you disembark the Zodiac, get you onto that rocky beach, and then wander around over that relatively flat ground. And if that's as much as you want to do, that's fine. If you're concerned that this isn't active enough, there's plenty to do, and we'll get to that in a second. But again, you can see here a wet landing. We give you a very good idea of what to take in terms of gear. We provide the red parka. It's waiting there on the ship when you arrive. It's one less thing you have to pack or to purchase. It's waiting for you in your suite when you arrive on the ship. But boots and gloves and hats and layers and that sort of thing will give you all kinds of guidance on in terms of what to take with you. And then again, you can see here, the tide is likely going out, so we didn't want to bring the Zodiac right up on shore. So this requires what we call a wet landing, and it means stepping into about 6 inches or 8 inches of water. Again, the boots that we recommend and that we rent are going to be critical to that. And this is your welcoming committee when you arrive on the beach. Again, for those who are concerned that this might be too active, if you just want to set up your tripod, if you want to sit on a rock and observe the penguins, one of the best pieces of advice that was ever given to me on my second trip to Antarctica, everybody disembarked and they walked to the right, let's say, to go over to where the penguin colony was. And I knew the expedition leader, and he helped me out of the Zodiac, and he said, go left. I said, there's no one over there. He said, exactly. Go sit on that rock and just sit and wait. And I did. And all these little penguin chicks came walking up to me because I just sat still. And they're so inquisitive. They started tugging on my pant leg, and they started tugging at my camera strap and my backpack straps that were hanging. That's how they experience the world, is through their beaks. And they're, more than anything, they're hungry, but they're also inquisitive. Anyway, there's just so many stories to tell about this incredible place. So if you're a photographer, if you're into nature, if you're into wildlife, a wonderful destination. But if you're worried that it might be too sedentary, that there isn't enough to do, you needn't worry, because grab a set of trekking poles, and some of the expedition team, and on 2 of our vessels, we're going to have 28 expedition team members for 240 guests. So that's a ratio of about 1 to 8.5. You take, find out which ones of the expedition team are taking off to go and do a hike, and you'll go off and do a 2-hour hike and go and explore that way. The other way that we explore is by Zodiac. So there are limitations in Antarctica as to how many people you can have ashore at a time. So we take 100 guests ashore, and we take another 100 Zodiac cruising. There's always going to be a group that are sea kayaking as well. There's a group of people who just say, no, I've got a spa treatment or I've got a massage. So that's how we sort of break out the numbers. But this group is Zodiac cruising, and it's just another way to see the wildlife, or excuse me, to see the landscapes and to see the, from a different perspective. The photography is great because you're a little bit further back, but you're just a few feet off the water as opposed to many decks up on the ship. And it gets you a little bit closer to some of the wildlife in a different way. Of course, you'll see plenty of penguins on land. And as ungainly as they are and as awkward as they are on land, they're absolutely sleek and beautiful when they get in the water, and very, very fast. Seals, a much better view of them from the Zodiacs, and in some cases the whales as well. So the Zodiac cruising is a very, very integral part of a trip to Antarctica. And another option is sea kayaking. Again, all of this is complimentary. We have 8 tandem kayaks on board, so we can take out 16 guests at a time. And you can see there are 2 red kayaks here. These are the kayak guides. So we don't just shove you out in a kayak and say you're on your own. We always send you with a couple of kayak guides, 2 guides with 16 guests. And they are there just to make sure that the pack isn't sort of drifting too far apart, keeping people together, what to go towards, what to stay away from, and pointing out things. For example, this whale that has just dived and where it's likely to resurface again. And if I know my humpbacks, it's going to come up around here. So these guides are saying, hey, folks, turn around. Let's slowly head in that direction, and let's see how close we can get when that whale resurfaces. So an absolutely incredible experience. Moving on to the Arctic. So I mentioned how the two are quite different. I think there's a video here as well. So we'll just go through that quickly.
While sailing on Silversea's first ever crossing of the Northeast Passage, I was struck by the incredible stillness of the Arctic Circle. We drifted calmly through pack ice as sunshine pierced the crisp Arctic air. From the top deck, we spotted 2 young polar bears in the distance. Time stood still, leaving me mesmerized as I witnessed these majestic animals exploring the frozen world of brilliant white ice and beautiful blue water. The polar bears captivated me entirely in their world of solitude, peacefulness, and freedom.
So, of course, one of the big differences between the Antarctic and the Arctic is the type of wildlife. Bears in the north, penguins in the south. Some people will ask, well, I thought I saw somewhere where there are penguins and bears in the same place. And the only place I've ever seen penguins and bears in the same place is in a Coca-Cola commercial. You don't get them in the same place. So the Arctic is different for a couple of different reasons. In Antarctica, we primarily access it from the southern tip of South America. And I know that someone has a question there about getting to Antarctica from the southern tip of South America, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So that's where, let's say 98%, that's how 98% of people get to Antarctica, from the southern tip of South America. In the Arctic, we can access it from Canada, from Greenland, from Iceland, from Norway. There's not much commercially from Finland or Sweden, but from Russia and from Alaska. So we can access the Arctic from all these different places, and it's different depending on where you access it from, and it's different at different times of year. There's a good time of year to go to see polar bears, and that's very different from the best time of year to go see northern lights. So we have to know what you're going to, what time of year you're going to go to the Arctic, or what is it you hope to see in the Arctic, and then we need to pick a date accordingly. The other big difference is that in Antarctica, all those images you saw with penguin colonies, it doesn't take us a long time to figure out where the penguins are. They return to the same colony year after year after year. So as long as we can navigate to that spot, we know we will find penguins. In the Arctic, we're hoping to see polar bear, narwhal, beluga, reindeer, Arctic fox. We just have no idea where any of them will be. So it's very much like going on a safari. The high ice class of the ship is what allows us to get into these bays and these inlets and these fjords and penetrate deeper in search of the wildlife. So it's a very, very different experience. It's very much like going on safari. Polar bears are hunting constantly and constantly moving. So we have no idea where they're going to be. We're looking for them with spotting scopes and binoculars all the time. And if we see them, we'll head in that direction. Walrus swim around in large groups, but they're underwater. Sometimes they haul out. And if we can find a walrus haul out, that's where we'll go and observe the walrus while they're out on land. So it's a very, very interesting experience from that perspective. And it means that your expectations just have to be aligned with that, you know, we don't know what we're going to find. We don't know where we're going to find it, and we don't know when we're going to find it. But when we do see it, we're going to stop and we're going to drop everything. This example of Northern Lights happened around 1 o'clock in the morning after everyone had gone to bed. So the expedition team had a very, very short discussion about this. Of course, we have to wake everybody up because we can't sit around at breakfast tomorrow morning and say, oh, you missed a wonderful display of the Northern Lights last night. That's not going to work. So instead, there's a very, very calm PA announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no emergency. Everything's fine. Put on your big red parkas over your pajamas, put your boots on, and come up to the observation deck. There's something we think you'd like to see. And nobody complains. If they don't want to see it, they stay in bed. Similarly with polar bears, you know, if we see them at 5 o'clock in the morning, we're going to wake everybody up. We're going to call the kitchen and say, delay breakfast, and tell everybody to come up real quick and get dressed because we're going to try and get the Zodiacs in the water and see how close we can get to the bears. So it's very much an expedition, a true expedition and an adventure in that sense. The Arctic more than any other place. So lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the Galapagos and another video.
Galapagos.
Oops, sorry about that.
Galapagos is unique because this is one of the few places on Earth where you're actually accepted as part of their environment. These species are not running away or flying away. In certain cases, they're coming up to you. And that makes this place truly unique. Something that surprises many people is the diversity of Galapagos. Not only the terrain, which is distinct from one island to the next, but also the diversity of life. We have a unique diversity. In areas where you have reptiles such as sea turtles swimming next to penguins. There's nowhere else on Earth that you have that combination. Being a naturalist on the Silver Galapagos is not only fascinating for me because of this environment that we're traveling through, but also meeting our guests that are coming in here and seeing Galapagos through their eyes and the excitement of being able to interact with the species here. It's very personal. There's no other place like Galapagos on Earth.
And if you've been, you know that none of those images were staged. That's very much what it's like. I had the pleasure of going most recently in July of 18 with my wife and my son, and it was absolutely incredible. And that's the sort of access you get to the wildlife. Everything you saw in the video, the wildlife is that close. We offer 2 different itineraries. You can see they're quite similar. What we've tried to do is make sure that we get to the places that will allow our guests to see all the major species, the reason people are going to the Galapagos. The sea turtles, the giant tortoises, the marine iguanas, the Galapagos penguins, the sea lions, the blue-footed boobies, the frigate birds with the big red pouch. Both itineraries offer ample opportunity to see both of all of those species, excuse me. So then the other question is, instead of, which itinerary do I do, there's not a great deal of difference between the two of them in terms of what you see or what you do. The other question is, when should I go? What's the best time of year to go? There's no bad time of year to go. It depends on what you're comfortable with and what you want to do and what you want to see. So this chart just sort of outlines, it's much more about climate and temperature and weather. There's a very, very distinctive warmer period from January to May and a distinctly drier, cooler period from June to December. But that's relative because the average air temperature in March and April is at its warmest at 83, and it's at its coolest in August and September at 70. So it's only a 13-degree difference. The water temperature goes from a high of 77 in February, March, and April to a low of 70 in August. So only a 7-degree difference. So you can see that the temperature fluctuations are not like we experience here in the northern part of North America. It's very, very stable and quite constant throughout the year. This warmer period is a little bit wetter, and it's mostly in the form of a mist or light rain. So it's kind of, the islands become a little bit greener. This is considered high season because it's when the kids are out of school. Same in December is considered high season. And the sunnier period is here in September, October, November. So that also helps people make their decision. And the other thing we can provide you with is, and provide the folks at Carousel with, are charts that sort of outline what's happening island by island, month by month, in terms of the wildlife behavior. These birds are returning, these turtles are nesting, these turtle eggs are hatching at different islands at different times of year. We can look at it according month by month by month. So that can help people make the decision as well. Something wonderful and unique about the Galapagos is all of the expedition team members have to be permanent residents of the Galapagos. In Antarctica, in the Arctic, anywhere else we operate, our expedition team, any of our crew on board could come from anywhere in the world. And I think we have people from 50 odd countries. In the Galapagos, when we operate in Ecuador, everyone on the ship has to be from Ecuador, and the guides all have to be permanent residents of the Galapagos. Who better to show you their backyard than people who live there? So they are the ones who bring it to life. And this is how we get there. It's a very, very casual trip. You don't need any special gear because we're not dealing with extreme weather. We're not dealing with extreme cold or ice conditions or anything like that. Excuse me. So it's very casual in the sense that people are in shorts and t-shirts and sandals. Most of the time, a wet landing here is not a big deal. The expedition team members, you're going out in small groups of 8 to 10 guests, walking around, and they're the ones who interpret it and bring it to life for you. The sea kayaking, another fantastic way to experience this. You're just a couple feet off the water for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time in a very small group with guides who are pointing things out. And again, complimentary, it's all included. The snorkeling is very, very, it's a very key element to an expedition or to a Galapagos expedition. We provide all the snorkeling gear, the mask, the fins, the wetsuit, and the snorkel. And once we can start sailing again, we're thinking it might be May, we're hoping. Not only are we providing the wetsuit and the fins for you to use, but the mask and the snorkel are brand new, right out of the bag, yours to keep. So in addition to a backpack and a stainless steel water bottle waiting for you in your suite, there will also be a mask and snorkel waiting for you in your seat. It's never been used by anybody else, and it's yours to keep and take home with you. So that's obviously around COVID that we're doing that. A wonderful place for kids. This is my son Alex when he was 5. 5 is the minimum age for expedition, and Galapagos is the ideal place to start. Kids love the wildlife. They love listening to the naturalists talk. They love going on walks around, and they love walking on the beach and just exploring this place that has no cars, no roads, no boats and jet skis bombing around. 97% of the Galapagos is undeveloped. We have a brand new ship in the Galapagos called the Silver Origin, designed and built with the Galapagos in mind. She's never sailed with passengers yet. She was delivered to us in July of last year, sailed across the Atlantic through the canal, and now she's sitting off the coast of Ecuador waiting until we can sail again. So brand new, very, very beautifully appointed, gorgeous ship, again, designed and built with the Galapagos in mind. You can see all the glass everywhere, all the windows everywhere. We started off by saying that the whole idea behind these presentations with Carousel is to get you thinking again and get you dreaming about travel. If you'd like to learn a little bit more, we've got this incredible blog called discover.silversea.com. These are just great stories about unique parts of the world. It's not a club you over the head, act now, savings kind of thing. These are just beautifully written stories about different parts of the world. And the videos that I showed you in this presentation and many, many, many more are available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and look up Silversea Cruises, we have our own channel, and there you will find dozens and dozens and dozens of videos to whet your appetite. So I'll pass it back over to Maggie and we'll finish up.
Great. Thanks so much, Carl. So as you can see, we cover expedition, the world of expedition cruising. We just talked about a couple of the destinations, but we go everywhere from New Guinea to Melanesia, to the western part of the Indian Ocean, to all over the world. So we can provide you with all these itineraries, but one thing that we put together is our Cruise with Confidence program. And we started this after the COVID program began to give you a more sense of reassurance that if you book a cruise with Silversea and you want to continue booking with us, you can cancel up to 30 days prior and we give you 100% of your future cruise credit. Now, if Silversea would have to cancel the cruise, of course, you'd have a choice of getting a full refund for your voyage, or we offer 110% future cruise credit. So we give you a little bit more of an incentive to stay with us and we book a future destination. We have some additional offers that we'd like to share with you. And those are programs that we have with an early booking savings. So as Doug said, taking a look at the future and where you want to plan your bucket list destination, thinking into 2022, even early 23, we have the itineraries for you. And we have a special savings of anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending on the voyage, if you pay in full by a particular date. The next pay in full option is on February 28th, and we have savings up to 20% on several of the voyages in 21 and the first part of 2022. We have also taken the deposit and just brought it down to 15%, as our normal deposit is generally 25%. So we've made it just at 15% for any voyage in 2021. As being part of a partnership with Carrousel Travel, we've extended a special offer for all of you today of a $250 per person savings on any voyage, that if you choose a cruise for next year or this year or next year, even into early 23, we'll extend this $250 per person savings to you. And we have that offer is extended for another 30 days. So with that, I'd like to pass it back to Doug, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Maggie and Carl. Awesome. I'm ready to go. So, sign me up with everyone else that's on the call today. So we do have one question. So if any of you do still have questions, please put them into the chat yet, and we're happy to answer them. The one question that was asked was, I have heard that crossing the straits between South America and Antarctica, the Drake Passage, is often very turbulent. I suffer from a bit of seasickness in relatively calm waters. Please discuss. The infamous Drake Passage.
The infamous Drake Passage, yeah. And its reputation is somewhat undeserved. Of course, if you go on YouTube and you look up a video of the Drake Passage, you're going to find a video of the Drake Passage, with very, very rough seas in the sea, a ship slamming into giant waves, because that's what sells, right? That video is going to get a lot of views. If you posted a video on YouTube of the Drake Passage, your Drake Passage crossing, and it was very, very flat, calm, no one's going to watch your video. It's not interesting. We say that the Drake comes in three forms: the Drake Lake, the Drake Shake, and the Drake Quake. The lake is self-explanatory, and I've experienced it a couple of times. It's mirror flat. You can't believe you're in the ocean, in the Southern Ocean between South America and Antarctica. The shake is what you would expect. Normal swells, just average. And then the Drake Quake is what we want to avoid. And in terms of their relative frequency, it's about 30% lake, 40% shake, 30% quake. It's the quake we want to avoid. And there's a couple ways that we do that. First of all, the silver cloud and the silver wind, they can do about 18.1 knots. So what happens is Doug is the captain and Maggie's the expedition leader, and they're sitting in Ushuaia as guests are boarding the ship, and they're looking at the radar, they're looking at the map, and they see that there's this ugly swirling thing right in the middle of the Drake. And if we go now, we're going to slam right into it. So they say, they put that up on the monitors around the ship and have a PA announcement and say, listen, folks, we're planning to leave about 12 hours later than we were going to. We were hoping to leave at 6. We're going to leave at 6 in the morning. tomorrow morning, and we're going to avoid this. We're going to let this thing blow through. Then when we clear the Beagle and get into open ocean around the Cape Horn, then the captain can open it up. We can do 18.1 knots. We generally can make up 6 to 8 hours. So we arrive in Antarctica about 4 hours later than we were scheduled to, even though we left Ushuaia 12 hours later than we were scheduled to. So we get there a little bit late, but we've missed a storm. Alternatively, if the storm is brewing and it's in the Pacific still and it hasn't made the Drake Passage yet, again, captain and expedition leader are looking at this and saying, okay, let's run it down there and beat the thing before it comes into the Drake. So again, in this case, rather than say we're going to leave late, we say we're going to sail at 6. It's an Argentinian 6. It's kind of 9. So in this case, the captain will radio down to the folks, the longshoremen and what have you down on the pier and say, I'm closing the doors and casting the lines at 6. We're going, so hustle. And he will. He'll leave at 6 and then go full speed and make up a bunch of hours. Instead of a 48-hour crossing, we can sometimes do it in 36. We're now there. We've arrived in Antarctica early and we've missed the storm, and guests are pleased that we get to spend a little bit of extra time in Antarctica. And lastly, the cloud and the wind, they were designed as classic cruise ships for roughly 300 guests, I think 296 guests. So they have a lot of weight to them, even though we're only carrying 240. So there's quite a bit of tonnage there, and very, very state-of-the-art stabilization as well. So even when we're in a normal Drake, that sort of 40% of the time when it's the Drake shake, it's a relatively smooth sailing. Sorry, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. We know that there are a number of people who are very, very, very prone to motion sickness. So starting in December of this year, we've created a new program that will complement our existing Antarctica programs called the Antarctica Bridge or Fly Cruise program. In this case, rather than starting in Ushuaia, Argentina, you're starting in Punta Arenas, Chile. You overnight there, and then we board a special aircraft that covers the Drake in 2 hours. And we land at a little Chilean air base on one of the islands just north of the peninsula, and a short walk to get to the beach. The Zodiac takes you over to the ship. You still spend 6 nights, which is about our shortest trip. You still spend 6 nights in Antarctica and then go back to that air base, fly the 2 hours over the Drake to get back to Chile. So we know that we need to address that. The fear of the Drake. I say the only thing worse than a rough Drake passage is Drake passage anxiety. A lot of people get worked up about it. But again, we've introduced the Fly Cruise program to address that.
That's great. Well, that was an awesome answer to that question. So,
thank you.
And I know we've had clients as well that have experienced both the quake and the lake. So it is quite unpredictable in a sense.
Yeah,
so
truly.
I don't see any other questions at this point. I don't think I've got anything else to share. Just keep in mind that special promotion. Again, not trying to put anyone in a position to book something if they aren't ready to commit to that, but we hope we've provided some great insight. Getting out of the norm and going to somewhere exotic is just, it's on a lot of people's bucket lists. And so I just appreciate all of the information, all of the inspiration you two have given us today. So with that, we thank everyone. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate your support. And I wish everyone on the call a great day. Take care and thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.